This story took place a few years ago, in a quiet neighborhood in a small town named Greenwood. The people in the area had always considered themselves to be friendly and caring neighbors. However, with the arrival of new neighbors, everything changed. The tenants of the small two-story house were Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They were an elderly couple, but their behavior had perplexed the neighbors from day one. Mr. Johnson always wore a black coat and hat, even on the hottest days of summer. At the same time, he seldom left the house and was always taciturn to the neighbors. His wife, Mrs. Johnson, was also seen always wearing black clothing, including black velvet gloves and dark glasses. She was completely uncommunicative with the neighbors and preferred to respond to everything with a nod of her head, after which she would quickly walk away. Their appearance and silence amazed everyone. But the real nightmare began when the neighbors began to hear strange noises coming from their house. In the beginning, the neighbors heard a loud crying sounding in the night. It was so eerie and heartbreaking, but no one could tell if it was male or female. Then there were vague creaks and knocks. It was as if someone was continuously scratching a huge nail on the glass. As time passed, these sounds became louder and more frequent, causing alarm among the residents of the neighborhood. Some even tried to find out what was wrong, but the Johnsons never answered the door, and when trying to talk to them during the day, they simply ignored all questions. One of the neighbors, unable to stand it any longer, called the police. When the police arrived, they broke down the door and entered the house. Inside, they found a strange and eerie scene. The apartment was filled with coffins in which lay mannequins dressed in black clothes. Taped to each mannequin's face was a piece of paper with Mr. or Mrs. Johnson's face printed on it. Their eyes had been unevenly cut out with scissors. The policemen were stunned by this macabre sight. The most horrible thing, however, was in the basement. There, they found a strange laboratory with an altar in the middle of the room. On the altar lay a doll dressed exactly like Mrs. Johnson. Around the altar were scattered Bibles, with pages torn out and stained with blood, and candles arranged. Mr. Johnson was found in an adjoining room lying in a coffin. He was wearing only his underwear, and his entire body was covered with ugly scars and cuts. He was in a deep catatonia and unresponsive to what was going on around him. Mrs. Johnson was never found. After this incident, they both disappeared from the city. The police could not charge them. Their house was sealed as an alleged crime scene, and soon abandoned due to the statute of limitations and lack of a crime. The neighbors never found out the answer to what happened. The Journal of Horrors. Please support the channel, like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell.